Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. A note that our first topic will deal with difficult subject matter. Another teen boy, the victim of sextortion, died by suicide last year. What's needed to protect children from this disturbing trend? What do you need to know so you can talk to your child about online safety? After 12:30, it is Black History Month. We are exploring the stories and the storytellers. Author Téa Mutonji will be with me, and we're asking you, what authors and books are you reading about the Black Canadian experience? I'm Michelle Eliot. Welcome to BC Today. Thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1, CBC Television, and live streaming on the CBC News app, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. Surrey RCMP announced yesterday that there are charges against a 26-year-old Nigerian man with multiple criminal offenses related to a sextortion case. It led to the death of a 14-year-old Surrey boy last year. The 14-year-old was contacted through Instagram and Snapchat and died by suicide in February 2023. A statement from the boy's parents was read by Surrey RCMP Sergeant Tammy Lobb.
It has been almost 1 year since we lost our son. He loved hockey and he loved life. Not a day goes by that we don't miss him. He was an innocent child who was taken advantage of due to his innocence. As we grieve the loss of our son, we want other parents to know this could happen to anyone. Talk to your kids about internet safety and keep the door to communication open so they can come to you for help. It brings us some comfort to know the person responsible is being held accountable. We hope this does not happen to another child.
That was Surrey RCMP Sergeant Tammy Lobb speaking yesterday at a news conference. Surrey RCMP say this was not an isolated case. They say they received an increase of 44% of sexual extortion cases over the years 2022 to 2023. And they are putting significant resources, they say, into this type of crime, including working with international agencies. Well, to talk more about this issue, we have two guests coming up, and we're asking you as well what you want to know about this rise and this disturbing trend in online sextortion targeting youth. And what do you want to know in order to talk to your kids about online safety? You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. By email, you can reach us at bctoday@cbc.ca. And joining me now are two guests. Jesse Miller is founder of Mediated Reality, and he speaks to teens frequently about online safety. Jennifer Hollinshead is a registered clinical counselor and founder of counseling practice Peak Resilience. Good afternoon to both of you.
Thank you for having me, Michelle.
To who?
Thanks so much for joining us. Jesse, I'll go to you first. Thank you for joining us on the phone. What's your reaction to this case? We spoke with you last year in the wake of another case of a teen boy in Prince George who had been exploited as well. What do you know about just how much this is growing?
Well, one, obviously the CRCMP are doing their due diligence in these kind of files, and we know that police agencies struggle in certain spaces with the amount of sextortion complaints that are coming in. It is good, though, that we have an increase in reports, because that means we're lifting some of the stigma around an issue that has existed quite frankly, in where we have young people using social media and mobile technologies that not only expands their ability to communicate with a number of individuals locally and internationally, but also just what it means for the reporting tools that we have in place, whether they be school-based, whether they be encouragements to come in to talk to law enforcement or school-based counselors, and then at the same time also how we see tools now empowering individuals, like we were seeing a new tool with the BC government being introduced to bring sextortion to a forefront of conversation as opposed to something that's stigmatized.
Yes, and what does that do? Well, this was an announcement just a few weeks ago from the BC government, really an array of things. One was, dealing with cell phones in class and policies around restricting use there. Another, and we probably talk about that as well, but another was to do with going to social media companies themselves when it comes to remuneration, seeking remuneration in light of harms that are caused. What does that say about the responsibility or accountability that needs to lie with these platforms?
Well, that's where we have a very it's a wide funnel of conversation. We seem to be throwing everything into the funnel and hoping that the end product is something that's tangible. I want to highlight here that no matter a person's age, any form of sextortion needs to be fully investigated, and whether that's intimate partner based, whether that's known in the community, or whether it's international, this just shows the reach that we have to go to. And so, for the RCMP to have to go to Nigeria, identify an individual, work with their counterparts in that country, there's a huge amount of resources that go into it. But what had to happen? We had to have a loss of a child in British Columbia for that to be the investigation piece. And so when we know that there are individuals who are victimized by, let's say, an intimate partner, that relationship has dissolved and the images are now being used as a weapon. Whether the person be a minor child or whether the person be an adult, we needed better tools to address these issues. And we know that even, in the past 5 years, we've had individuals who've gone to police and police say things like, you should have taken the photos in the first place. Now what we're trying to do is really take away the stigma, put in tools to help victims no matter how they got to that point. And again, if we have to, go to literally halfway around the world to work with individuals to get those who are basically, targeting people with the benefit of having internet at their disposal held accountable.
Jennifer Holland said, from your perspective, working with families, what's your sense of how prepared teens and their parents are for the dangers that do exist through online interactions?
Not prepared, and it's myself included. I don't want to believe that these dangers do exist, right? It's horrifying. And so one of the things that we look at when it comes to exploitation is that there has to be some sort of relationship in order to exploit, right? So usually there's some sort of relationship, and then based on that, the person is exploited. And so what I would talk to my kids about is, what does our relationship feel like? First of all, what does your relationship feel like with other people? And how much power and control and respect are we sharing for one another? And do you feel that in different online spaces? Like, it doesn't have to be necessarily fully sextortion, right? But it could be, do you feel emotionally safe when you go on this TikTok user's feed? Why? I wonder why that is. So we're looking at the power and toxic nature that can happen in relationships, and then using that to then say, okay, online, we don't know the nature of the other person. And so the other thing
They may
that I mentioned,
they may present as one thing, but you just don't know if that's true.
exactly. And so the thing that I think is important to recognize in terms of mental health and safety in general is the reasons that we're having these problems come back to toxic structures like exploitative capitalism, colonization, supremacy culture, thinking that some people are worth more than other people, and patriarchy. And these forces are what are the roots of online sextortion. So how can we combat these forces in big and little ways on a government level, but also in relationships with one another?
We'll get to that as well. Some interesting points that you've made there about the wider picture, but how individuals and families, I'm imagining households, just it may feel so daunting to have to come up against these cases. Here we are, an international investigation, right? So what do people need to know? That's what we're asking you. What do you think, what would you like to know to be able to talk to your child about online safety? What are the questions in your mind? Police call this a disturbing trend, youth online. sextortion. You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. And again, a man in Nigeria is facing charges after a months-long investigation by RCMP, and this was into the death of a 14-year-old boy in Surrey. And police say that the boy sent images, intimate images, in a case of financial sextortion. And we'd love to take your calls on this and get some more information out there on how to protect children. We have a call right now from Bill, who's on the line in Vancouver. Hi, Bill. Thanks for calling us. What questions do you have?
Well, I was most interested. I understand the consequences and what happened, but I'm interested in the journey. How does it start? What are the first 2 steps? What are and what are the next 8 steps? So how does it work? Kind of on I understand the macro part, but on the micro level. You put one foot in front of the other. So how does it begin? I've got a son. I'm also very savvy in social media, working in that field very actively. And so I'm curious, what's the first step? And then what's the second and third step? How does it manifest itself?
I can hear that you really want to know this urgently. I understand. You're a parent. Yeah, I get it.
Totally.
Bill, thank you so much. It's a great question. Jesse, can you take us through how does it start?
Well, the thing is that each instance is going to be its own unique series of events. But the reality of it is this is sexual curiosities meeting connection on the internet. And again, whether the person's posing to be a known individual or somebody in the same peer base, age range, or whether it's just a connection online that then takes steps towards photo sharing and information sharing. The majority of this internationally is international money grabbing. And so it's threats to safety. We have photos of you. We're going to send these to your family members. We're going to post them online. And the individuals who are wrapped up in this, especially internationally, are usually very savvy to understand where they do cross legal consequences when it comes to uttering of threats or online harassment, because it is an orchestrated international issue. But I just want to take a moment just to echo our other guest here in the sense of where these issues are rooted. And again, family conversations do mitigate some of this issue when it comes to, I'm talking to somebody online, I don't know if they're a legitimate person, can you help me? Here's where I'm feeling unsafe with this person, they've asked me for photos, or I've even sent a photo, and now they're threatening me with this. Like that's one of the biggest hindrances that young people have, is the fear of going to family. And any of the people that I've helped support in these kind of family conversations, knowing that you have a safe space is a key part of the conversation for young people. But I just want to highlight here, we're talking about the internet. We're also forgetting the fact that right now in Canada, we're facing a very serious conversation about sex assault in our hockey culture, and the toxicity of that is no different in the sense of individuals filming something happening, having evidence on their phone, hiding that evidence, hoping that they don't get in trouble, whether it's a person on the other side of the planet or a person who is hitting the ice in our communities. This kind of toxic behavior exists. It comes down to what kind of power does the person think they have over another individual. And
let me just, again, a lot of issues that are, intertwined with this, but you touched on it there, right? In terms of, individuals, what you're looking for is that interaction, just to get, again, to the micro that Bill was asking about. It's an interaction. There is a request or an ask for photos. Is that one of the first sort of red flags?
That's the first red flag when it comes to the idea that you're building a relationship and the photos get requested. But we have to keep in mind here too that a number of young people do feel empowered in the space to share images of who they are in these online communities, and they're not necessarily feeling victimized until that threat of safety comes in, where the person's saying, "We're going to send this to your family. We're going to put this online. We're going to make you look less than." And that less than piece is very important, and that's where parents need to be directly involved and saying, you're no less than, we're here to support you, and we understand that you're in trouble.
That is really, that seems really important, that dynamic, that power dynamic, and inequity that is generated or created in that relationship. Bill, thank you very much. I think that's a question that probably a lot of parents are asking, so I'm really glad that you called it. Go ahead.
Can I just jump in for 1 sec? So my takeaway from this at the moment is slow contact of some sort across internet, social media, you name it. Slow ramp up of friendship online that seems totally legit, and kind of like a very slow romance, one step at a time, and then it moves to a request for images. So that seems to me to be one of my takeaways. And then the images could be innocent. They could be happy snaps of family vacations, and then it moves to something more insidious.
Thank you very much, Bill. I'm glad. And Jesse, does that sound right in terms of his takeaway?
That could be definitely one of the paths that's exploited, yes.
Yeah. Bill, thank you again. Really good to have your call. It is now 12:22, 1:22 in the Mountain Time Zone. We are going to stay on this story as well, but bringing you some more from yesterday's news conference. Sergeant Dave Knight of the Surrey RCMP's Special Victims Unit says sextortion is a public safety crisis.
Online child sexual extortion is a borderless crime, and these offenders have direct access to our children by targeting them through their phones, mobile devices, computers, and gaming consoles. As police, we cannot fight these predators alone. We need everyone who works with children and youth, as well as parents and guardians, to get educated about how to spot the signs, have these conversations with youth in our community, and know how to help our youth if they become a victim to sextortion. Our message to youth: you are not alone, and there is life after images. It is important to know that if this happens to you, you will not be in trouble with the police, and you're not to blame for the situation. Please reach out to somebody and talk about it. There is help available. Our message to adults in their lives: protecting our youth is a community responsibility, and everybody has a role to play in knowing the signs of financial sextortion and how to help youth who become victims of it. Please see our media release, which we will be sending out today, that contains safety tips and resources on where to go for help.
You can find that media release by searching for Surrey RCMP Newsroom online. And the resources you'll find there includes cybertip.ca. That's the national tip line for reporting online sexual exploitation of children. And for support, you can contact the Kids Help Phone. Text the word CONNECT to 686868 to reach a crisis responder. You can also call 1-800-668-6868. And of course, that new national mental health line is 988, 3 digits, 988. All those numbers, again, you can find online by searching Surrey RCMP releases. We are discussing a disturbing trend, a rise in reported cases of online youth sexual exploitation. And a man in Nigeria, this was announced yesterday by Surrey RCMP, a man facing charges after a months-long investigation. And this was into the death of a 14-year-old boy in Surrey. And police say the boy sent intimate images in a case of financial sextortion, and the boy died of suicide. It is a disturbing matter, and I hope you're taking care as you listen to this segment. The number again for help, the National Mental Health Line, is 988. My guests discussing this and taking your calls and questions are Jesse Miller, founder of Mediated Reality, and Jennifer Hollinshead, a registered clinical counselor and founder of the counseling practice Peak Resilience, asking you what you need to know when it comes to speaking to your child about online safety. Our numbers again, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. Elena is calling us from Vancouver. Elena, welcome to the show.
Hi, well, thank you.
What did you want to share?
I would like to share that my son was a victim of a predator online. He's 18, and I caught the situation before anything bad happened. He still won't tell me exactly what happened, but it was in the process of developing. And I can tell you that predators are very skilled at building relationships, and they do it slowly. They transfer the kids from one platform to another so that the kids feel safe. They introduce sexual language slowly so that the kids can't really tell that this is happening. Kids are not capable of defining whether this is a bad situation or not. And my message to parents is to screen your kids' social media platforms for strangers. This wouldn't be happening at the rate that is happening if we wouldn't allow our kids to connect with strangers. If they don't know people in person, they shouldn't be connecting with them online. If a bunch of strangers showed up at your house, you wouldn't be like, sure, okay, all these people that I don't know, go have fun with my kid, take my kid out for the day. We wouldn't do that. So why are we okay with our kids connecting with people that they've never met in person? If we, as parents, as the adults, go through our kids' accounts and guide them through, this person seems like they're your friend, but they're not. This is probably, normally they make themselves very relatable, so they're a little bit older than them. They give them a lot of advice. They find out what issues the kids are dealing with, and the kids really find comfort in connecting with these people. But if you can tell your kid that's not, a girl that is like 2 years older than you, that's a 40-year-old man talking to you. Like, you don't know who that person is. So to me, as parents, if we would not allow our children to hang out with strangers in person, why are we doing that online? Why are we not seeing the signs way before they start, when they're connecting with these people?
How did you come to learn this, that your son had been having these exchanges?
Because my son said, I met this girl online and she would like to attend my graduation. And I was like, what? And my first reaction was like, oh my God, he's never had a girlfriend before. Like, okay, so, I didn't want to react negatively because I wanted him to have the space of he met a girl and okay, let's figure this out. And then this girl was a couple years older than him. And of course, it wasn't a girl, but, and she was in a university. And, so my son is trying to figure out how to bring her over to Vancouver. And and one of my friends said, hang on, isn't your son underage? Because I think he was 17 at the time. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, this person is older. And as I started to think through it, I Googled online predators, and that's how I started to figure out that this person was actually, not a kid that he had met online, and he had a relationship with this person. And so when I caught it, I texted this person back and I said, you're interacting with a minor, and this chat will now be monitored. And then after I realized how the entire process, because they had started the relationship in a different chat. I can't remember what it was.
But go ahead.
And then they and that's part of the pattern. They transferred the relationship to
another platform,
Snapchat, I think, because what happens with Snapchat is that kids feel safe sending pictures because they disappear. But in this Snapchat, you can see that the other person took screenshots of whatever my son sent to that person.
Helena, I don't want to get too much into the details of what your son has been through, just to protect his privacy as well. But wow, it sounds like you really intervened. And your message was to intervene and to not let your kids start to get to know people that are actually strangers. But what about before that? What you have? It sounds like you have a pretty open relationship with your son, and you have those conversations.
But I would have never guessed that, given all the conversations that they had at school, that he would have fallen victim to this. Because this person, like what my son said, is like, oh, a whole bunch of us know this person, because this person had asked them, like, to be introduced to other friends. So there was kind of like a handful of boys in grade 12 who knew this person and like this person had become familiar to them as a friend. So, like it would have never occurred to me that he would not see the signs. But then when I looked at the progression of the relationship, it's like there's no way he would have known what the signs were. Like even for me, when he told me about this girl, I was totally into the ride for like, okay, well, let's figure out how to bring this girl. Like, why is she coming? And you know what I mean? Like it took me a while to see it. So, I mean, how could we expect them to see it?
And now, are you able to have, with your son, you're able to talk about this and resolve it?
Well, he didn't want to tell me anything about it. Like he kind of like cut off the relationship and kind of like move on. Let's put this behind us. Of course, he's learned the lesson, but to me, the bigger lesson to me as a parent who got caught in this story. It's like, like why, like to me, I kind of wish that like if I could have done this all over again, I would have been more vigilant about do not engage with strangers, period. If you don't know the person, like someone in person, do not friend them on any platform.
That sounds like a good point to end on. Elena, my goodness, what an ordeal and experience that you've been through. Thank you so much for calling in and sharing some of that and sharing what you learned with other parents and other listeners as well.
Yeah, well, hopefully, if I could help anybody with what I learned, I could. Yeah, that would thrill me.
Yeah, all the best to you and your son. Okay.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Wow, what a story. Jennifer Hollins had so much to dig into there and to unpack. I understand Jesse Miller, we've lost our connection there. We are extending the segment a little bit here. But what stands out for you? It sounds like, she's talking about really don't befriend people you don't know. It sounds, like a simple thing, but you just don't know. Sometimes it can seem very innocuous too.
Exactly. What stood out to me was the crazy making piece of all of this, which is she said something like, there's no way he would have known. It was gradual. It was appropriate.
Yes, she did say that.
It was right. And so what we know about people who have experienced different types of abuse is that, hindsight is 20/20. We can see after harm has happened what was leading up to it and the fact that that was all grooming. And so I think it's important to recognize that everyone in our world has a responsibility and a role to play when we're talking about online sextortion with youth or with anyone. We know actually that from Stats Canada, around 10 to 30% of all Canadians have actually experienced childhood sexual abuse. So the fact that this is happening, unfortunately, we know that it's happening. Then what we need, I love what the caller said, which was like, I jumped in, I was a parent, I, worked with him. And I'm thinking, what about all those parents who have to work 3 jobs because we can't make it in this province
or didn't
city.
Google because she happened to Google and learn a bit
or
more.
exactly. Yeah. So there's multiple pieces that, yes, families, if they do have resources, they can jump in. Individuals, we can learn. Schools, I know that schools can do more to teach online safety. And I know that healthcare systems can learn more about training and prevention and seeing what's happening. I know that the legal system has unbelievable amounts of work to do and has changed quite a bit when it comes to understanding the very difficult nature of sexual violence. And then the government coming in, providing a livable wage so that parents and families can protect their kids. All of these things are interwoven, and so we all can come together to bring down the risk. The other piece is, it's not a coincidence that people who are more at risk are people who don't have as much money, who are potentially Indigenous, people of color, LGBT folks. And so the more we can rally against the forces that are creating all this judgment and hate on all levels, I think the better the results.
It really is an issue that goes from the very personal, like what our caller experienced, to the macro, right? To all those larger issues that are at play as well. And you're right. We should follow with schools and what resources are there to teach about digital literacy and online safety, things in healthcare as we follow through with this issue. Where do those conversations go? Where are the resources? Really appreciate your joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer Hollinshead is a registered clinical counselor, founder of the counseling practice Peak Resilience. My thanks as well to Jesse Miller, who's the founder of Mediated Reality. This is BC Today here on CBC. It's 12:37 now, 1:37 in the Mountain Time Zone. Time for a CBC News update, and here's Belle Puri.
Good afternoon. Farmers around the province are preparing for potential drought this summer. To that end, the provincial government will host a series of in-person workshops in more than 30 communities. At these workshops, farmers will receive practical step-by-step water management advice and information about available financial support. Williams Lake's power source could be in jeopardy. Atlantic Power has given BC Hydro 12 months to give it more power, or it will shut down its operation. Atlantic blames a shortage of waste wood for tough times. The plant burns biofuel to create power. And Dawson Creek RCMP have seized drugs and guns from 2 vehicles in the last 3 weeks. The latest incident took place January 25th when Highway Patrol pulled over a truck. The officer seized a loaded 12-gauge shotgun, suspected fentanyl, cell phones, and drug trafficking equipment. Earlier in the month, police seized a carbine, ammunition, suspected drugs, and counterfeit cash from another vehicle. A look at the BC weather along the north coast, mainly cloudy, a high of 3 degrees. In the Peace region, flurries should end this afternoon, a high of -5. For the central interior, cloudy with the chance of flurries. In the southeast and southern interior, a chance of showers or drizzle. And along the south coast, a 60% chance of showers in Greater Victoria, a mix of sun and cloud in Metro Vancouver. And that's the CBC News from Vancouver.
Thank you very much, Belle. That's Belle Puri in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Welcome back. You're with BC Today here on CBC. And in our last half hour, we were discussing how do you protect your child from youth online exploitation. This after a case in Surrey, a tragic case of a 14-year-old boy who died by suicide last year following being targeted for financial sextortion. A man in Nigeria is now facing charges after a months-long investigation. Meg wrote us, the big missing piece is why are parents allowing their kids to have free reign with phones when we know the dangers? Some actions parents can take. Never allow phones to be with kids overnight in their bedrooms. Have a special app or through a provider where parents can track the activity of your child. When they first get the phone, they must know that this is part of the deal with having a phone, and parents can stop them from having access to the phone after bedtime through their internet provider or other means. Thank you very much, Meg, for your thoughts. Our email is bctoday@cbc.ca. And some interesting points from our guest there, Jennifer Hollinshead, talking to schools as well as to what those kinds of lessons that are part of the curriculum are to deal with digital literacy and online safety. We know that the BC government is promising new policies to deal with and restrict cell phone use in classrooms. That is supposed to be coming this September. There's a lot of discussion and debate around that, but it might be a good discussion for our program perhaps next week in the coming days to talk about classes and what kids are learning about online safety. This is BC Today. Well, February is Black History Month, and we are exploring the stories and the storytellers who are sharing the Black Canadian experience. And we are asking you, how are you celebrating Black History Month? And who are your favorite authors? And what books about Black history and experiences stay with you? I'd love to hear from you. Our phone numbers are 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email us to your suggestions, bctoday@cbc.ca. I know that we have a lot of book lovers in our audience, and we often get lots of emails about books that you are loving right now or have loved over the last few months. We would like to hear your suggestions, your recommendations. Our email again, bctoday@cbc.ca. In a few minutes, we'll be joined by author Téa Mutonji, and we'll talk about her book, Shut Up, You're Pretty, that is now in the running for Canada Reads. We'll talk about that in a few moments. First, CBC's Black Life Untold Stories is an 8-part documentary series about the rich and complex histories of Black experiences in Canada.
The story of this country is incredibly hidden.
Canadians of generations have been miseducated.
We've just been lied to and tricked.
There's this palpable sense of alienation where you were expected to know your place.
You were not part of the white man's country.
And they began to challenge that.
Well, CBC journalist Matt Allen recently hosted a screening and panel discussion in Vancouver with author David Cheriandi and artist-curator Naya Lewis. Matt joins me now for a few minutes from his home base in Prince Rupert. Hello, Matt.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Nice to see you. I'm sorry I missed you when you were in Vancouver.
No problem. It happens.
Well, tell us
You're very busy with the TV show.
Well, tell us about this documentary series. You were busy as well because you were moderating this panel and viewing this documentary. Well, what stands out for you?
Yeah, and it was really great to hear some of those clips from the trailer for that series of episodes, Black Life Untold Stories. The episode that we watched is called Creation Insists, and it's this historical overview of some of the artists and thinkers that history is forgotten in some ways. I mean, in the best case scenario, that history is forgotten, and worst case scenario, we're just marginalized for one reason or another. The episode opened with, in 1989, with the Into the Heart of Africa exhibit at the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto. Mm-hmm. It was very controversial, and essentially, what this exhibit was doing, it was inviting people to come in and get a sense of African history, but the history was told very much from the perspective of the colonizer, Michelle. And it was not very well received by the Black community and allies of the Black community at the time. There were protests, and I think the point was that so many times, whether you're dealing with whether it be Black or Indigenous or Asian, if you're a minority, so often history is told by the conqueror and the colonizer in this particular example. And so what the episode did was it gave space, I think it breathed life into some of these people who you might not have heard of, but who going back more than 100 years, contributed a lot to Canada, and in this specific case, in the realm of art and just political thought, music, film, and it was a very profound and enlightening piece of documentary and history telling to watch, Michelle.
Wow. You've touched on this a little bit already, but why is it important to highlight these stories? I mean, that struck me when you said that the history is either forgotten or marginalized.
Yeah, I think there are multiple reasons. I think one, there's this common historical experience of being Black that people just aren't aware of because it gets lost to history. So for myself, I'm an immigrant. I moved to Canada when I was right around 11 years old. And I think it's something that young people do is they feel like their experience is the only experience that's ever happened. and
Sure.
they're not, and you can be unaware sometimes that whether it be experiencing discrimination, or if it's something a little bit more subtle, like being the only Black person in a workspace or in school or something like that, you might feel like you're the first person that's gone through that. And I think something that was really powerful with this is it just reminds you that there is this legacy, and there's a community that not only exists in your own time, but goes back historically, and that there are people who have experienced what you've experienced, and that there has been a fight that's been going on for a very long time. And so there can be some isolation that you can feel just living life as yourself. And I think for me watching this, it was just a good reminder that there are people who have walked that path, who have gone through it, they made it through. They had successes, they contributed things, they added things of value. They formed their own communities that are valuable. And so there's this rich legacy that's left to future generations to carry forward. I think as well that it's important for all Canadians to see this too, because in the same way that somebody like myself might grow to appreciate my own history, I think if you're Canadian, Black, white, Asian, Indigenous, or otherwise, we're in a very, I think, contentious time at times, with people being segmented into different groups. And I think this is just a reminder that we're all like, everybody built the country, everybody contributed. Canadian history is multicultural history, and that there are traditions, whether it be the Asian community that helped to build Vancouver, whether it be the Black soldiers who helped to build the Alaska Highway in BC, whether it be the Indigenous people whose lands that we're on. Canadian history really is everybody's history. And I think if we can be reminded of that and take ownership of that as a collective, I think that'll be to everybody's benefit.
And that stories are stories and of lives, right? And how relatable they are. It's interesting, one of your panelists was David Cheriandi, whose book Brother, very celebrated. I remember reading that book a few years ago. It's set in Scarborough, where Téa Mutonji's book is set. And it's about the Black experience, but I, as a Filipino immigrant, I related so much to that relationship of brothers that he wrote about. And it was a story in the end about human beings, about people. Yeah.
I think just to add to that, it's tricky. So we're in Black History Month right now, and I think there is tremendous value in Black History Month, because even though we like to say that we should be celebrating these things every year, we are human, and as soon as February is over, we kind of go back to everyday life. And this is me saying this as a Black man. And I think taking time to highlight this time is important, because it is a reminder. But your point about us being human and remembering that there is common experience that we can draw on, I think helps to make everybody a bit more relatable. I think the more of that we can do, the better off society will be in general, not just now, but year round,
Matt, great to speak with you. Please find me next time you're in Vancouver, okay?
Will do.
Don't leave without saying hello. Nice to chat with you.
You too.
Matt Allen, CBC journalist based in Prince Rupert. We are asking you, how are you celebrating Black History Month? And what are the books and the authors that will stay with you? Brother is one of those that has stayed with me for sure. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email to bctoday@cbc.ca. And I'm pleased to welcome here in studio the author Téa Mutonji. She's based in Toronto. In 2019, she was named a writer to watch by CBC Books. This year, her book, Shut Up, You're Pretty, is a finalist for Canada Reads, the annual CBC Battle of the Books. And tonight, Téa is speaking at an event at the Vancouver Public Library's Central Branch, just right across the street from us. The event is free at 7 o'clock tonight. And before that, Téa is with me here. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you. And, this book, How are you feeling about all the accolades that you're getting? And we're going to get to just how long ago you even wrote this, but this is a pretty frank and disarming collection of stories about a teenage girl. You have a young woman as well in there featured. How does it feel to have your stories in here being celebrated?
I'm beyond grateful, especially because I wrote it so long ago and the book came out 5 years ago. And personally, I kind of had moved on. I had to kind of keep writing more things, go on with my life. I'm doing my master's. So to get the second chance to revisit these stories, also as I'm entering my 30s, something that I started at the beginning of my 20s, is sort of like getting a chance to look at my entire life and to see how far I've come and all the growing that's left to do. So on a personal side, it's really given me the chance to revisit who I used to be and why I even decided to tell stories in the first place. And then on a career side, it's just like, man, I really needed that push to just feel like maybe this is the right path for me, or maybe I'm doing something that is not a terrible idea.
Not at all. Yeah, what a way to be reminded of that. You were 22 when you wrote it. You're now 29. You tell us a bit about this book, about the stories that you did want to share.
Yeah, I started with the story If Not Happiness, and it was actually just an assignment for class when I was at the University of Toronto in Scarborough. And my classmates, they loved the story. They reacted so well to Loli and Jolie and the friendship and their tenderness. And so I had that in the back pocket. But I also had a bunch of poems that I just wrote because I used to be a poet before I became a fiction writer. And one of them was Tilapia Fish, which is now the ending story. And that started as a poem that I wrote for my mother. And at some point when I was looking at my writing, all of my writing archive, I was like, these two stories, they feel like they could be in conversation with each other. And so when I set to write Shut Up You're Pretty, I knew that I wanted to arrive at this poem that was Tilapia Fish. I wanted to write a character that one day is old and has some kind of wisdom, has survived some kind of life, and is watching her mother and thinking, oh, that it's what it means to keep going. That's what it means to take everything that you've experienced and to just wake up one Sunday morning and say, let's have fish. And so I was writing towards that story. And since I had If Not Happiness and all the drama and the adventures that Loli and Jolie were taking, it just felt right to take these two characters specifically, to take Loli and to arrive at that kitchen table.
It's a journey of a life.
Yes.
It's a journey of a life. And as you say, you have been through a journey yourself. And I mean, you do tackle some issues in here as well. I mean, the Me Too movement came out as this was, tell us about that. Yeah.
Yes, I had already written my first draft of the book, and I already had certain themes of sexual assault and sexuality and just womanhood, I guess, that were really so prevalent in the book. And then I start working on my final edits, and internet is blowing up with this movement.
Yeah.
And so, I felt I was already angry to begin with, but this was like my rage put on a pedestal as the world, it really felt like the world was sort of mourning together, or perhaps women were sort of coming together in a really global way. And that gave me a lot of emission.
That solidarity.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, the stories were already as they are written, but I felt more confident and I felt more comfortable writing a story that does deal with some heavy topics, right? To do it in such a way that I felt the world was prepared to maybe allow the story to have a place and to be discussed in a way that didn't feel private or secret. So much, at least when I was growing up, so much of women issues, if you will, were things that we couldn't discuss at a cafe. They had to be at a sleepover in private underneath the covers, right? They weren't things we were allowed to actually talked about. So having the Me Too movement gave me a lot of confidence to feel like, okay, I'm writing something that is a little risky and maybe I'm doing it at the right time.
Wow. And for yourself, so first of all, this is, as I mentioned, Scarborough. You grew up in Scarborough, right?
I did.
And you moved there as a refugee.
I did.
Yeah, tell us about that experience and how that's informed your writing.
It's really, so I lived my early years in Scarborough. I was 9 to 13. Then I moved to Oshawa, Ontario. But I still say Scarborough is my home because I returned when I was 19 years old, and I continued living there, so on. But when I left Scarborough and came back as a adult, I guess. I was 19 years old for school, and I would talk so happily about the fact that I grew up on Galloway. And I'd be like, oh my God, I love growing up on Galloway. All we did is like hang out and play games, and we're kids of the street, and it was so comfortable, and it was so inviting. And this was an experience that a lot of my classmates didn't have because they grew up in the suburbs, but like Pickering or something. I don't really know. And I was like kind of offended by the reaction. People would feel like sad for me that I grew up in Scarborough, and specifically in Galloway. They'd be like, you poor thing.
Yeah.
Or they would tell me about some negative culture event that they read about in the news.
Yeah.
And I felt like, you don't know the Scarborough that I
Yeah.
experienced. You don't know the Galloway
Yeah.
that I experienced. And I knew that that's where I had to base the book, so I can give the chance to write about the community care that comes with growing in environments like that.
Exactly. The characters that you grew to love.
Yeah.
And you talk about, I just have a minute left here, but the joy, right? Seeking joy.
Because I still say this, and my parents make fun of me for it, but growing up in Galloway was some of the best parts of my life. I had a big community of people. We did barbecues, we did sleepovers, we did trick-or-treating on Halloween. It was a lot of fun, and I felt that I needed to create a space to have that in my book.
I think that's something that I'll take away, is the need to create space for that, for those stories as well.
And they need to kind of exist together,
Yeah. Oh, what a wonderful, congratulations on all your success, and what a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you so much.
That's Téa Mutonji, based in Scarborough. She's visiting Vancouver. Tonight, you can see her at an event at the Vancouver Public Library's Central Branch. And this is to discuss her book, Shut Up, You're Pretty. It is a finalist for Canada Reads, and it's being championed by actor Kidawashi Rutendo. That event, again, is tonight at the library at 7 p.m., and it is free. Thank you so much to all of you for calling in. Thanks very much to Elena as well, who called us in our first half hour, for sharing her story and the advice that she wanted to disseminate among other parents. You can always email us, bctoday@cbc.ca.